A superintendent blocks your innovation. What's your first move?
It kept getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where I ended up resigning in April. And if you're in the education space, you don't resign when a school year is still going. That was, 11 years ago when I left that situation, and it still gives me a little bit of nausea when we bring it up.
Janelle McLaughlin joins us to explore how creative leadership is built through goodness, relationships, and cultures where everyone's ideas matter.
So if your boss is asking you to do something, as long as it doesn't conflict with your integrity, you still have to figure out a way to do it. What was a challenge you experienced that also really ignited a passion in you?
Can a leader be both deeply kind and deeply influential, or does one threaten the other?
I think that they should be both. I think the best leaders are both kind and influential. And I think it's their personalities that help them be influential to start with.
When did leadership stop being about answers and start being about presence for you?
I think probably before I even started my teaching career. It's just always been something that has been nurtured in me from a very young age. And when you become a teacher, it's more about forming relationships with the students in your class and less about seeing yourself as a leader.
What's the most underrated skill of a creative leader today?
Oh, goodness. This is going to sound strange because you added the word creative into creative leader, but I think it's creative thinking. I think too often as leaders, we have to think more about logic and strategy, and we forget to tap into that creative side of our brains.
3, 2, 1.
This is Grounded Moments, where wisdom meets purpose. Janelle, you shared a quote from Sir Ken Robinson. The role of a creative leader is not to have all the ideas. It's to create a culture where everyone can have ideas and feel they're valued. Where did that quote become real for you?
I've always loved quotes. I mean, I find inspiration in them. I remember when I first became a district curriculum director, and Twitter was new to me at that point. And Twitter was where I would go get my little daily inspiration and little PD moments. That particular quote from Sir Ken Robinson really started making an impact in my life as a leader when I was researching and writing my first book. And because I find so much motivation and inspiration in the leaders that surround us, I was really looking for the best ones to start each of my chapters. And that quote actually begins the book altogether because I feel like it really embodies what we want as people and what we want to create as leaders.
Now, earlier, from an earlier question, you had said you started to figure this out even just before you got into education. Can you walk me through the discovery of you wanting to take on leadership and the style of leadership you have?
Yeah, I would say that piece of it really got developed more once I became a career person, after college, and you start to think more as an adult, right? But I was an elementary teacher. I had a fantastic principal in my second job. My first job was fine. He wasn't a bad principal, but that second principal really started to see leadership qualities in me and actively tried to nurture those and pull those out. I think the first opportunity that I really saw outside of just in my classroom with my students was getting to be the literacy lead for my building. And literacy, of course, is a passion. When I say, of course, as a primary elementary teacher, if literacy is not a passion, you're probably in the wrong grades. But my principal saw that I was trying to do things that were not typical of what had always been done in our building. And she really gave me a platform to share that and to grow that across my building.
Janelle, before today's conversation, I reached out to your colleague, Debbie, and she told me something pretty powerful. She said, everyone wants to hang out with Janelle. Her warmth makes people feel special. And that made me wonder, how do you create the same sense of openness and value when you're leading a room full of administrators or coaching leaders who are carrying heavy things?
I think going in with the attitude of I'm here to learn as well. I may have some different experiences. I might have some different opportunities than the people in the room, but they also have different experiences and opportunities than I do. And so to come in not as the expert, but as the side by side learner, um, I feel like I'm pretty good at reading the room at this point in my career. And so just being able to build rapport with them to show that their thoughts, their ideas are valued, then we can work together during sessions like that so that they feel like not an outsider is coming in to tell them what to do, but that somebody's coming in to be a thought partner and to help them really put a plan in place that makes sense for their district and not just some cookie cutter type of program.
With that, do you think that leaders underestimate how far kindness actually goes in building culture?
Yeah, I think that it gets pushed down the list. I think I've worked with some leaders that moved up in leadership pretty quickly. One in particular I've been coaching for, I don't know, 3.5 years now. Um, Fortunately, he has that growth mindset. He sees the value in leadership coaching, but when he moved into that role, he was trying super hard to establish credibility because he was fairly young for the position that he had. And so he was really looking more at, how do I show my professionalism? How do I show my expertise? How do I show my intelligence? And I had to come in and say, how do you show your kindness? How do you show that you care about the people you work with? How are you building relationships that go beyond the staff meetings on Tuesday mornings? And I've really been able to see that growth happen in him and his team because I've been working with his team as well. And I think that happens more often than not is people trying to establish their leadership and forgetting that it really starts with those relationships.
With that, adding creativity to it, is creativity more about strategy or safety?
Mm, that's a great perspective, Tyler, that I haven't thought about. Um, I think creativity is more about strategy. Safety will keep us in our boxes and keep us in our comfort zones. Now we absolutely have to think about security and we have to think about doing things that are safe for everyone in that creativity realm. But if we think of it just as safety, we're going to not push those creative boundaries.
I agree with you completely. And when I think of creativity, I think of it as a new approach to something. So my mind goes to strategy too, but always in the back of my mind on that, I'm thinking, well, we still want people to feel safe as we make those new approaches and try those new things. So I find that they're always in tension when I'm trying to make those creative decisions and move forward with those things. With that, we're going to get a little creative here and see what you truly value. We're going to play our first game, and this game is called Principle or Preference. I'm going to read a statement to you, and all I need you to say is if it's a principle, meaning something core, it's a value to you, everybody should adopt this thing, or it's a preference, meaning it doesn't have to be adopted all the time. It's okay if not everybody takes it on. Ready to play?
Let's go.
All right, it is rapid fire. There is no time for explanations. Let's get into principle or preference. Creativity can be taught.
Principle.
Leaders should speak last, not first.
Preference.
AI belongs in every educator's toolkit.
Principle.
Mistakes should be celebrated publicly.
Preference.
Coaching is more powerful than evaluation.
Principle.
Emotional intelligence matters more than technical skill.
Principle.
Every meeting should end with a question, not a conclusion.
Preference.
Trust grows faster through listening than direction.
Principle.
Strategy without empathy fails.
Principle.
And great leadership is quiet leadership.
Preference.
There we go. That's principle or preference. Now we know what you value. And if you're listening to this episode, make sure you let me know how you would have played that game. Definitely some difficult questions in there as we go through. And with that, I want to actually jump right into our next game where I'm going to guess, well, I've actually been pretty bad at this game. So I'm going to do my best to guess your very first job. So what I would like you to do is think of your first paying job that you had, or you had to make some kind of a wage off of it. And I'm going to get 2 minutes. I can ask I've always said yes or no questions, and then sometimes I don't ask yes or no. So I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. And at the end of 2 minutes, we'll see if I can guess your job. Or if not, you can tell us or you can keep it to yourself. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Do you got your job in mind?
Yeah.
Okay. That was not one of my questions, by the way. So I didn't start my timer. 2 minutes is going to start right now. First question is, were you on your feet most of the time?
No.
Okay. Was teamwork essential for this job?
Yes.
Did you have to wear a uniform?
No.
Was there a dress code that you were expected to dress up to, though?
No.
Did you have to use tools or equipment?
Yes.
Was it like technology-based tools like a computer?
Yes.
Okay. Did you work directly with customers?
Yes.
Okay. Were your customers adults?
Yes. Both.
Both. So you also worked with kids?
Yes.
Was there an age threshold in which you wouldn't work with somebody?
No.
Okay. What? Okay, that answers that question, actually. Were you expected to act a certain way at your job, like always smile? And
Yes.
Okay. Did you handle complaints?
Not really.
Okay. Was your manager or boss on site with you?
Yes.
Was it in a locked location or were you moving around?
Like were we in a building?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Hourly pay or salary?
Hourly.
Okay. Minimum wage or more?
Minimum wage.
Okay, so we're sitting at a desk somewhere, working on a computer, talking with people. Did you talk to them in person or on the phone or through email?
Both phone and person.
Phone
These
and
were like
person?
pre-email days.
Okay.
I'm old.
Was it a service? Did you get like an employee discount to it?
No.
Okay.
It was a service. I didn't. Oh well, I guess you would call it an employee discount. Let me change that to yes.
Okay. Did the job teach you something you still use today?
Yes.
Okay, and that's my 2 minutes, and that was a really hard round for me.
You'll never do it.
I'm gonna take a guess that you were a ticket salesperson to like movie theaters, and you sat in the booth and sold tickets to people.
I was actually the assistant to a receptionist at a dental office.
And I wanted to go receptionist, but yeah, okay, there we go. My question for you
it was hard. Yeah.
is so what did that first job teach you about how people work and learn?
It really taught me customer service skills, honestly. The phone calls were me calling to remind them of appointments. And so I had to get comfortable cold calling people, which as a 15-year-old, that was super uncomfortable. And then I also had to learn to put data entry into the computers, and I had to make transactions as far as like taking their money and scheduling their next appointments. And there were people in there that didn't like to come to the dentist. And so being able to be like a friendly face and to be like a kind voice to them during all of that. So it just really taught me to be patient and how to talk to people when I was not very comfortable in that role.
Okay, let's try this. You're gonna cold call me, and rather than get me to sign up for a dentist appointment, I want you to try to get me to sign up for your leadership coaching.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Let me get in the mindset here. Ring, ring. Hello.
Hi, Tyler. This is Janelle McLaughlin. I'm a leadership coach, and I noticed that you do a lot of work in the leadership realm. Do you have a couple minutes to talk?
Yeah, I do.
Awesome. Have you ever worked with a coach before?
I have, but not consistently.
So when you did work with a coach, what was the best part of that experience?
I appreciated the just the human connection, and they often looked at things in a way that I didn't look at that, so I enjoyed new perspective.
What was something that you wish had been different about that experience?
Cost maybe for one, but maybe the frequency.
Too much, too little?
Too little.
Okay. If you were going to work with a coach again, and the cost was not a factor. What would be the biggest takeaways that you would hope from that time together?
Somebody that would understand the situation that I'm in and be able to brainstorm ideas, relate, listen, and come up with a process or a system that could effectively impact what I'm trying to do
Sure.
instantly, but also set it up for the longevity of success.
I think that sounds exactly what coaching should be. I did tell you on our call that we would just talk for a couple minutes, but I would love to talk to you more and would like to offer you a free half an hour of coaching just to see if this seems like a good fit for you. Would you be interested?
Let's go. That sounds great. It'll be linked in the description of this show. So, Alchemists, if you're listening to this episode, make sure you check out the description for your link to connect with Janelle on that. Janelle, that was awesome. Thank you so much for the little role play there. With that, I threw some adversity your way, and that's going to bring about the air element when we talk about headwinds and tailwinds. Okay, let's talk turbulence here. This is headwinds that either shape our leadership, tailwinds that give us some extra momentum, maybe some lift, or maybe slow us down. And we're going to get right into the next game. This game is called Hot Seat, Janelle. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I just need to know within 15, 20 seconds or less, your very first move. Okay? A superintendent blocks your innovation. What's your first move?
Oh, my first move would be to engage the superintendent in a conversation to figure out the reason why. Is there a fear? Is it cost? Is it board support? So first, I would need to dig into more about the why behind the block.
Okay, a teacher challenges your idea mid-year. What's your first move?
Probably similar answer. Again, a lot of times when I'm working with teachers, if they do challenge something, it comes from a place of fear or a lack of understanding. So maybe it's something I haven't explained or communicated well enough. Maybe I need to model it in a classroom or co-teach alongside the teacher. So again, it's like a deeper conversation to get to the why.
Someone you're coaching struggles with morale. What do you do?
Yeah, that one is just going to be, I work with people. It's more like a lack of confidence. I see that a lot more than lack of morale, mostly because I'm coaching people at the district level right now. When I've coached teachers, I'll see a lack of morale because there's just so much at teachers these days. They've got so much coming at them. And so really, I get to be their cheerleader. I get to build them up. But we also get to talk through strategies that can help them help themselves to build their morale and confidence.
AI implementation causes fear for somebody. How do you approach it?
Generally, I'm going to show them some ways that it helps save them time, how it can be a workflow, efficiency strategy for them. Again, like fearfulness, I feel like usually comes from lack of knowledge or lack of experience. So I'm going to sit with them and I'm going to show them how to make it work for them.
And a leader you're coaching avoids self-reflection. How do you take that on?
Goodness, this happens a lot, Tyler. And I'll say when I coach people, I'm really looking for people that are coachable. So that means that growth mindset and self-reflection is the biggest piece of growth and learning, in my opinion. And so I'm going to intentionally ask some hard questions during our coaching calls that will force that self-reflection. If you just expect people to do it on their own, it's going to get pushed down the priority list if it's already uncomfortable for them. So then I'm just going to kind of push them outside of that zone when we're actually in our coaching sessions.
And there we go. That's the hot seat. Thank you very much for playing another game. Janelle, you left your position, I believe, because of a leadership conflict.
Mm-hmm.
What did that experience teach you about power and self-respect? And let's start with maybe, can you walk me through that situation?
Yeah. That was, let's see, 11 years ago when I left that situation. And it still gives me a little bit of nausea when we bring it up. I had been a classroom teacher and absolutely loved it. I got my master's degree in elementary education because I was sure I would never want to leave the classroom. Um, I have since coached people like, still get your master's in something different. You never know. But I had an interim principal at the time. My principal just retired. He came in, he had been a principal somewhere else in the district. He came in to lead our building for 1 year while he was also acting as interim superintendent. And we thought he was fantastic. He was very charismatic. He came in, was leading our building in a way that was about the opposite of our former principal, who I highly respected. I'll say, like, the other principal was awesome. So it's not like we needed a change, in my opinion. He came to me one day and he said, we're going to add a curriculum director position. I think that you show a lot of qualities that would be good for it. I would like you to apply. So I'm going to fast forward. I applied. I got an interview. I got the job. Then I had a big gut check moment of what did I do? I'm leaving the classroom. I'm leaving teaching kids that I love. But I had to trust that that was where I was supposed to go. That guy had then become superintendent. So somebody that we thought was amazing is now superintendent. I directly report to him as the curriculum director for our district. And it was a new position, like I'd said. So there was no one in it before. So I was kind of setting the role as I went. And everything that all the ideas I came with, he was super supportive. I thought it was great. Other people that had been working with him for years kept saying, like, you just wait, like, you haven't seen the real side of him yet. And I thought, oh, you guys don't know. I just kind of thought, no, that's not true. You just don't like him. About a year in, it completely switched. He was almost like Jekyll and Hyde. I had to keep very detailed notes because he would call me out on stuff and I would say, this is what you told me to do. And you just never knew which person you were going to get. And it started highly weighing on me. I've always been really confident professionally. I've always been very passionate about my job. And I think I weighed about 30 pounds less than I do now. It was such a bad situation, super stressful. And I remember talking to my dad, who had always been in business, and he's like, you can't show your emotion when you go into meetings with him. And I'm like, I don't ever mean to. It is you walk in with him smiling and big, and as soon as you sit down, it's, why did you do this? Why did you do that? And I would always have to be bringing up meetings that we had in front of other people to show that it wasn't just me misremembering. So it kept getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where I ended up resigning in April. And if you're in the education space, you don't resign when a school year is still going. And so I had, on top of that, not another job lined up. And I was finishing my principal licensing at the time. I didn't really want to be a principal. I really loved being a district administrator, especially in curriculum instruction. And I had just led our school district through their one-to-one implementation. So I had this new passion for instructional technology. And I took that whole next year I ended up substitute teaching. I got to work for an amazing leader. I got to reconnect with a classroom and just having fun with kids again. It was kind of this year of healing, from going from being super confident and really passionate to feeling like I don't know if I know what I'm doing anymore because of how that leader had just beat me down, to being like, okay, this is why I'm an educator. This is why I entered this field. And it was during that time that I did a lot of self-reflection on, what did I love the most about being a curriculum director? And it always came back to the professional development piece. I loved working with the principals. I loved working with the teachers. I loved leading curriculum development. I did a lot of professional development district-wide. I loved that. So that led me into looking into consulting. So that whole experience first moved me out of the classroom, which I never thought I would do. So it broadened my horizons to begin with. Gave me this new challenge of being a district administrator and really helped me grow and learn as a leader. But then that adversity forced me really to leave a district that I probably would have retired in, to be honest, and think way beyond what I ever would have thought before. And so moving into the consulting realm I can very confidently say I've grown more as a leader in this role than I ever would have had I stayed in that district.
How did that moment reshape your definition of leadership from before the position to after the position?
It's true that you learn how to be a good leader by seeing a bad leader as well. And so it really made me see what he did and want to be the complete opposite of that. And so it shaped my feelings of, I mentioned earlier, I was shaped and nurtured as a leader from a young age. My parents did that. I had other people that did that. Part of that is just becoming this kind, relational type of person. That experience with that superintendent showed me how I needed to level up. Like being kind and relational is one piece of it, but then you really have to have that confidence and that experience and that culture that allows people to have that psychological safety in order to be in your presence. So it definitely made me level up out of a really bad experience.
Would you say that this person was a leader?
In the very loosest sense of the word. He was very charismatic, which is how he got people on his side. And then he led from a point of fear and bullying and manipulation and power. So there are bad leaders. Like we can't just say that they're all good ones. So I would say, yeah, he was still a leader. He just was a very poor example of what a leader should be.
How do you now coach so that leaders who feel stuck in systems like you were can get through this?
I really coach around focusing on our own realm of control. And so even when I was in that experience, I couldn't control what he did at the district level. I could control what I did in my position. And so same with people that I'm coaching now. I've yet to coach a superintendent. So I haven't coached at that level, but I have coached people on the cabinet. And so coaching them to stand firm in their beliefs and in their integrity is one thing. And then also you've got to walk that fine balance of still doing what is put forth at the district level. So if your boss is asking you to do something, as long as it doesn't conflict with your integrity, you still have to figure out a way to do it that still resonates with you as a leader. So just really like talking through all of that, coming up with strategies that they can still feel good about. Sometimes it's a personality conflict. And if it's just personality, then we've got to work through that. We all work with personalities that are different than ours. But if it really is compromising your leadership, then that's a whole different story.
Does this person get a free consult if they reach out?
Yes.
There we go.
I'm happy to talk to people for free all the time. So, yes.
There we go. We're going to jump into another game for this segment. This is called Flip the Script. So I'm going to read a statement that would be, well, most widely viewed in a negative connotation, and it's your job to spin it so that the statement is actually a positive.
Okay.
The only catch is you can't just say, oh, the truth is the exact opposite of this statement.
Fair.
Okay. Leaving a job means you lost.
Oh, not even close, because you've got this new experience to discover new things about yourself. So that job, even if you loved it, even if there were parts that you loved about it, it now has opened doors for you to discover something brand new about yourself.
Kind leaders get walked over.
Absolutely not true, because the kind leader is building trust and relationships with the people that they're leading. And so those people want to work with them and want to be able to uphold the vision that the leader has set forth.
AI will kill creativity.
AI can open up creativity. I will tell you personally, I feel like since I have started working with AI, I've become even more creative because it's that creative thought partner that I don't have when it's just me sitting at my computer by myself. So now I've got this person in the room with me, not person, you know what I mean? This thing that can help broaden the way that I think about things. And I don't have to do it the way AI says, but it definitely gives me some different ideas that I might not naturally come up with on my own.
Conflict means something's wrong.
Conflict can mean something's wrong, but it doesn't have to. Again, it can be just something that doesn't sit exactly within your own mindset or the way that you've done things. So conflict can push you to thinking a new way, trying something differently, pushing new perspectives, and a lot of growth can come from those moments of conflict.
And leadership can't be taught. You either have it or you don't.
I think that leadership can definitely be taught. I do think there are natural leadership tendencies, but I feel like everybody has those if someone can help draw them out, locate them, and then you do have to do the work. You have to, even if you have some natural leadership tendencies, you still have to do the work to become a good leader.
Janelle, what belief about leadership did you have to release to become the leader you are?
The leader does not have to be the expert. So releasing the fact that you don't have to know everything walking into a situation. You don't have to be the very top person in the game, in the room. You get to sit at the table with other people and learn from their knowledge and from their expertise as well.
Thank you very much for sharing. We're going to jump into, as we start to talk about the change here and either what we let go, what we take on, what we need to do moving forward, into our water element. And let's get into ripples of change. Change doesn't always roar. Sometimes it ripples quietly. Janelle, you led a trailblazer cohort implementing GenAI. What did educators fear most and what excited them the most?
I think they feared trying something that they, one, weren't used to, didn't know how to do. They were scared about doing something that would harm the students. Like that's a very real fear of, I want to make sure I'm protecting my students as I'm trying something new. They were fearful of this is going to open doors for students to be able to cheat earlier. They had a lot of fears, honestly, and it was pretty new in that district. And so they didn't have a lot of district guidance yet. The district was building their guidelines while the teachers were piloting it in their classrooms. And so Trailblazer was the best term for them because they had to be willing to jump into the fire without really knowing the right and left hand limits. That also excited them. They didn't have those parameters put into place, so they could really use it and dig into it in a way that would best support them and the teaching and learning happening in their classrooms with their students.
So a word that hasn't come up yet in the interview is responsible. What does responsible implementation look like in running this for you in that team?
So I'm going to go broader. Responsible implementation for AI starts at the district level. The district people have to put those guidelines in place. I would have recommended that those were in place before we did the Trailblazer cohort, because I do feel like those teachers would have operated a little bit more freely had they known their right or left hand limits. I had to tell them throughout the whole situation. They'd be like, I don't know if I can do this. And I would keep saying, like, you can do this. Like, your district has allowed you to be the pioneer to decide what works and what doesn't. And we talked about like personally identifying information, student information. Like, of course, they're not going to put any of that in there. That was part of the front load learning that we did with the cohort before we started. So responsible use would be those guidelines in place from the district. And then support at the principal level for teachers to be able to try things and know that it might fail. And then the teachers being willing to try things and know that it might fail.
So what would be something that maybe most teachers don't know that they could and should maybe use AI for that this group discovered?
Well, lesson planning, first of all. Differentiation is probably the easiest kind of dip your toe into the water of AI. As a teacher, it was really hard to be able to meet the needs of every student in my classroom. I remember tiering lessons to 3 different levels for most things and hoping that it got most of the kids, right? Because that was all I had the time to be able to do. Now I've got this tool where I can put in my lesson and I can say, replicate this for students reading at a first grade level, replicate this for students that are working at a junior and high school level. So being able to create differentiated lessons is, I think, the thing that teachers should be using first and foremost, even if they're scared about using it anything beyond that lesson plan, for sure.
Hmm. We're going to get into some quick tips here where I'm going to just ask you a quick question, and in the shortest way possible, although it can be a little longer if it needs to. I want your best tip for that situation. So what's the quickest way to spark creative thinking in a meeting?
Mm. So I like to use something called brainstorming. My company does this a lot because a lot of times when we brainstorm, it's the loudest voices that are getting heard. So
Hmm.
brainstorming is everybody's taking X number of minutes to write down all their ideas about this topic. And then we're going to talk about them in small groups, but it's to make sure that every voice is heard, instead of just like the select few that are usually the talkers.
Nice. What's a move that builds trust during change?
Listening. 100% active listening, but also including others in the change building process. So it's not going to just be my vision. It's going to be a group of representatives of the different stakeholders. They're going to help me create the vision. They're going to help me create the communication plan and the action steps and the implementation plan. So not just being the top-down voice, but being a voice at the table with everyone else.
How do you coach someone that's afraid of new technology?
Showing them, sitting beside them, demonstrating, finding out what they want to use it for. Not going to just teach you a technology for the sake of teaching a technology, but if it fits with what you're needing and wanting, then I'm going to show you how to apply that.
I think people with that often forget that they learned how to walk, they learned how to ride a bike, they learned how to play with a new toy when they were a kid growing up. And when we reach a certain stage of adulthood, we stop getting frequent exposure to new things. And so when something new comes along, there's that fear. But if we view a new technology or a new method to try something as your first time getting on a bike, right? And that's why so many great leaders and coaches give that metaphor, then it can completely change the perspective of the learning process from I'm afraid of this to, oh, once I get this, it's actually going to be really cool. So it's almost a mindset shift in coaching people through that new technology embracement. Okay,
For sure.
what's one habit that helps leaders stay grounded during chaos?
I would say a good accountability partner. So having somebody in your life that can help be that thought partner, that grounding person that can be like, this is okay. Like, this isn't really that big of a deal, but it doesn't have to be somebody in the school district. It can be a friend, a family member, it can be a mentor or a coach. But I think just having a person that they can reach out to.
At a close-up view, innovation is cool, it's fun, it's exciting. At a 30,000-foot view, seeing the whole picture, are we overhyping innovation and underbuilding the culture that needs to sustain it?
Ooh, I think they go hand in hand. So the culture has to be there first. I feel like the culture has to be built first before you can really expect any kind of change. But our world's innovating every day, and we've got to keep up with it, or surpass it if we're really being creative and in our thinking and our doing. So I feel like you've got to have both you've got to have a culture that feels safe to explore and innovate.
Mhm.
And then you also have to have that for the innovation to thrive.
What does innovation without humanity become?
Um, Nothing. It's that humanity, that human perspective, the human mind that's going to take innovation to where it needs to be.
Does AI play a role in innovation?
For sure. And that's where also you've got to have that human-centered approach to using AI. Like, AI is innovation. There's parts of it that have only come about because somebody innovated on an idea. But without that person programming, prompting, and then deciding how to use it, it doesn't matter if it's there or not.
For now, it might
Yeah.
change where it self prompts. So we'll have to wait and see on that one to be determined. we're gonna segue here. We talked about the decision making process a little bit there, so let's jump into our fire element and let's get into spark or burn. Janelle, becoming an independent consultant is a leap. What pushed you past the fear?
The need for preservation. I think in the beginning days of that, it was one, I was excited. So that pushed me past the fear because I really thrive in new challenges and enjoy new things like that. But also I needed to make money. I gave up like a district position. And so a lot of it, I actually was talking to a colleague yesterday that's also been a consultant for a lot of years. And I said, that's how we started. Like we said yes to things and then we figured out how to do it. You could not go in with an imposter syndrome mindset because I was the person. It was only me. I was the one responsible for whether I succeeded or failed. And so I had to go in with confidence. I had to push through that fear and just say yes and figure out how to do things.
What is ALP and how did joining it shift your identity as a leader?
Yeah. So ALP stands for Advanced Learning Partnerships. It's the consulting firm that I currently work with. I will say that I'm going to take you back to when I first started as an independent consultant. I was reaching out to consultants on LinkedIn as I was doing that internal reflection. And I would just say, like, how did you get started? Are you happy that you left the district? Do you regret that? Because I was trying to work through those fears and those challenges of moving on. I got almost no response, which is why I say I will talk to people free about what I do all the time, because I try to be that person. If somebody reaches out on LinkedIn to me about it, I try to respond because that's what I needed at the time. In that time period, Amos Fajak, who's the founder of ALP, reached out to me. We were not connections on LinkedIn, but he DM'd me and he said, "Hey, I see we're both connected with Tom Woodward, and anybody connected with Tom's quality people, I would love to talk and see if there's a way for us to collaborate." And my first thought was, I have no idea who Tom Woodward is. You know how some of those LinkedIn connections are?
Yeah.
Since then, I've worked with Tom and he is quality people. And so, but I scheduled a phone call with Amos and I knew within 10 minutes I wanted to work with this guy. Like our philosophies on education meshed, our personalities were in a good match. He basically said, I don't hire people onto my team until they've been independent consultants. And I will coach you through how to set up an LLC, how to start your own independent contracting business. And so he started giving me work from the beginning. Not enough to be full-time. That was the time that I would say yes to. I was doing copy editing work for a guy in New Zealand. I mean, like there were all these random jobs that I took. But as ALP continued to give me more subcontract work, I continued to realize that was the work I wanted to do the most. And so over the year, I was independent for 5 years. Over those amount of years, probably the last 3, I only worked with ALP because I would turn down other stuff to make sure I had time to work with the jobs that they gave me. They empowered me. Amos was about as opposite as you could be from my former superintendent as you could get, which was refreshing. There was no micromanagement. I mean, it was just like, hey, we trust you, go do the work, which was refreshing and empowering and also made me step up because I was the one in charge, again, of my own well-being and my own success. And so then COVID hit in March of 2020. I was doing a job in North Carolina for ALP. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, it was like trying to figure out how I could get back home because schools were shutting down and airlines were shutting down. And so I was like, I am not going to have any work and I don't know what to do. And that was really scary time because I didn't get paid if I wasn't working. And then in May, Amos posted 2 positions for leadership team work, and I got one of those positions. And so it took me from independent contractor, where I already knew I loved doing the work that this company does and represents, but now I get to help form and shape the way the company operates.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to jump into another game here. This is called Final Answer. It's a this or that, would you rather. I'm just going to read a quick this or that, and you have to tell me which one you're going to pick, and there's no time to justify your answer.
Okay.
Okay, coaching or consulting?
Coaching.
Empathy or efficiency?
Empathy.
Lead from behind or lead from the front?
Behind.
Change systems or change people?
Systems.
Curiosity or clarity?
Yeah, clarity.
Innovation or consistency?
Innovation.
Listen more or speak more?
Listen more.
Grow or stability?
Grow.
Culture first or strategy first?
Culture first.
Spark the idea or amplify the idea?
Amplify the idea.
And there we go. That was the fastest round of final answer I've ever played. Why the hesitation on curiosity or clarity?
I think about this book that I've read by Brene Brown where she says clear is kind. And I definitely think you need to have curiosity, but without the clarity, it inhibits the curiosity. So it was not saying I don't want curiosity. It's just like trying to rank which one's a little bit higher than the other one.
Makes a lot of sense. Janelle, one of the things that we've started to do on the show is the previous guest will leave a question for the next guest, not knowing who they are, what they bring to the floor. And they're going to do their best to answer it from the world that they exist in. So I'm going to read you a question that was left for you. And then at the end of this, I'll ask you to leave a question for the next guest. And the question that was left for you is, where does humans and empathy fit into the world we live in? And how do we put it into action?
I feel like the human part of our world and the empathy that they should convey has been diminished. And so it's important for all of the just well-being of humanity, of society, of community. And so I feel like there's one, it's been pushed aside, but also I feel like there's a desire for it to be back. You see all of these different like grassroots organizations in communities, in schools, in companies even, that want to raise that and strengthen it, which I think is super important. We just have to have people that are willing to do the hard work and to put themselves second in order for that to happen.
And what question would you like to leave our next guest?
What was a challenge you experienced that also really ignited a passion in you?
Okay, I got that typed out, and we'll make sure that the next guest gets that question. Janelle, what are your final thoughts that you would like to leave the audience with?
I think just that everybody deserves to grow and deserves to like plug into themselves and to put into their own well-being. And so finding ways to learn and grow and evolve and develop.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of the show. If you have feedback, a suggestion, or just want to start a conversation, fire off an email to me, Tyler at elementaleducator.com. I actually read them. And if this episode sparked something, leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps more leaders find the show. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, where I put out additional content. I'll see you next time, same place.